or there's a language barrier. I know any of the folks that I've talked to at the Clarksville BDDS, they've always been very helpful.
So. Oh, absolutely. Yes. Yes. So, and you know, they're not going to take away the paper version in case somebody doesn't have technology, because not everybody does. And even if they do, they're not necessarily comfortable with it. So, you know, it's important to make sure people are able to do whatever works best for them. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's go ahead and get started. I'm recording if anyone joins us late or is just gonna watch our recording, and we are so grateful for you joining us. We don't want to take up too much of your time this morning, Miss Carly. So for anyone who's here with us, we got a few folks. Hi, Scott. And we want to welcome, oh gosh, I already forgot, Miss Carly. Hey, Scott, how are you? Okay, so you said Carly Sciortino-Poulter. Did I get it? Oh,
you did.
Okay. It was like 15 minutes ago and I already forgot. Hey, Heather, how are you? We have Miss Carly here with us from the ARC of Indiana, and we're so grateful that she hopped in to join us this morning, and she's going to teach us all about Indiana waivers. If anyone has a question, you can either like raise your hand or wave at me and I can unmute you, or you can pop it into the chat and we can get Carly to answer all of our questions. So I'm going to toss it over to you, Miss Carly, and we're excited.
Well, good morning, everybody. I'm so glad you were able to join us today. It is wonderful to actually be able to see people again. I know that may sound a little bit strange, but I'm a people person, and you know, kind of being restrained is kind of getting to me at this point. So good morning. It's wonderful to meet all of you. Today we're going to talk about Medicaid waivers here in Indiana. And as we're talking about that, if you've got questions, by all means, go ahead and chime in and ask, because I want to answer whatever questions you may have. I will also say, right before the pandemic hit, Indiana was in the process of redesigning our waivers. That's kind of been put on hold right now as we're getting through everything else. So this information is accurate as of right now. I do think that once the pandemic is over and once things settle down, we will get back to the idea of redesigning our waivers. So keep in mind some of those things that you may want to see, because one of the great things is that the state is very, very interested in getting input from families and from self-advocates about how these waivers should work and how they will work best for individuals and families. In fact, we were doing a waiver redesign tour around the state. In fact, we even came to New Albany right before this hit. And in fact, our very last waiver redesign meeting, we had to make virtual, and then the next week the state shut down. so it has all been pretty close together. So let's go ahead and get started. So let me share my screen here, and there we go. So today we're going to talk about Medicaid waivers and something called the LifeCourse Framework, which is something that the Bureau of Developmental Disabilities is using with all of their clients. And I'll get more into that here in a few minutes. But I'm with the ARC of Indiana. And if you've not heard of the ARC of Indiana, we're an advocacy organization for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families. We were actually established back in 1956 by families who wanted a better life for their kids. You know, and that seems like such a simple thing, doesn't it? Of course we all want a better life for our kids, but think about it. It was 1956. If you had a child who was born with a disability, you were told to place that child in an institution. You were told, don't go visit because that would be confusing and cruel. And then you were encouraged to have another baby as soon as you could so that you wouldn't feel as sad. And our parents said, forget that. I'm raising my own kid, and they're going to go to Sunday school, and they're going to have play dates, and they're going to play baseball with everybody else. And so that's how the ARC was started. Today, we are the leading advocacy organization for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families in Indiana. We are committed to progressive legislation and public policy. In fact, since the General Assembly is in session right now, we are working on a lot of legislative matters, including things like raising wages for direct support professionals, working on various education issues. In fact, one of the laws we're working on right now is to have the state go back to individuals who finished high school with a certificate of completion or who finished with an IEP, and make sure that they have information on job opportunities and post-secondary education opportunities so that they can work. And a lot of other things. We are also home to the ARC Master Trust, which is the state of Indiana's largest pooled special needs trust. It's a way to save money for a person with a disability without jeopardizing any of their Medicaid or Social Security benefits. We are also the founders of the Erskine Green Training Institute. I just realized that we opened 5 years ago, and EGTI has trained well over, I don't know the numbers to be honest, but it's well over 100 individuals with developmental disabilities or disabilities in general in the hotel, restaurant, and hospital industries. So we're really, really proud of that. And we're affiliated with the ARC of the United States. So the information that we're going to talk today is provided thanks to funding and collaboration from the Indiana Family and Social Services Administration, the Division of Disability and Rehabilitative Services, or DARS, and the Bureau of Developmental Disability Services, which people call BEADS. So if you've ever heard somebody talk about the BEADS office and you're furiously Googling trying to figure out what in the world this is, that's the Bureau of Developmental Disability Services. I think we all have a bad habit of speaking in alphabet soup and forgetting to ever say the words that actually go with it. So the Bureau of Developmental Disabilities and the Division of Disability and Rehabilitative Services has adopted as their vision statement that all people are empowered to live, love, work, learn, play, and pursue their dreams. So let's get started. So I talk to a lot of families, and a lot of times they'll call me up and they'll say, I need to sign up for a waiver. And I say, okay, great, not a problem. And the very first question I ask them is, has anybody bothered to explain what this is? And they kind of hem and haw and eventually sheepishly admit, no. And I said, they never explained it to me either. How about if I start there? And there's this sigh of relief. Because that's just it. You know, people tell us to sign up for things and they tell us to go look into this or go look into that, but nobody ever explains why. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So a Medicaid waiver is what Indiana calls their home and community-based services. That's the official title in Medicaid speak. And it's a way to access services to help individuals live as independently as possible in their communities. Now, in order to have a Medicaid waiver, the person must be eligible for an appropriate category of Medicaid as well. But here's the catch. When you have a waiver, we change a lot of the Medicaid rules. I like to joke that we are the purple sparkly unicorns of the world because a lot of the rules for us wind up changing. And the biggest one is that when a person has a waiver, they don't look at family income or family assets. They only look at the individual's income and the individual's assets. Now, Medicaid will always use the term resources. When I think of resources, I think of things like Down Syndrome Louisville and the things going on at the parks and the libraries. When I think of money, I think assets. So I tend to use the word assets, but just so you know, the official term is resources. And an individual cannot have more than $2,000 in assets or resources in their own name. But there should be a big neon flashing asterisk right next to that because there are all sorts of exceptions to that. So for example, a person can have a special needs trust and Medicaid nor Social Security will count it against them. A person can have an ABLE account and Medicaid will not count it against them, nor will Social Security, at least up to the first $100,000. So there are a lot of exceptions to that $2,000 asset rule. Again, a person can own a house that they live in and they won't count that against them. They can own a car that either they use or is used on their behalf. That is not counted against them. So several exceptions to that $2,000 asset limit, but that's kind of a general rule of thumb. So here in Indiana, we have two different types of waivers. We have waivers through the Division of Aging, and those are the Aged and Disabled Waiver and the Traumatic Brain Injury Waiver. And then we have waivers through the Bureau of Developmental Disability Services. And that's going to be the Family Supports Waiver and the Community Integration and Habilitation, or CIH waiver. So let's start by talking about the Division of Aging waivers. And the most important thing to know here is that despite the fact that it's through our Division of Aging, and despite the fact that the main one is called the Aged and Disabled Waiver, there is no age limit to this waiver. There are infants who are on the Aged and Disabled Waiver. And I will tell you, when you tell a mom of a 6-month-old that she needs to call her local area agency on aging, she thinks you're a little crazy. But there, like I said, there is no age limit on these. So with the Division of Aging waivers, those are really designed for individuals who have really significant medical needs. The purpose of these waivers is to help individuals with serious physical disabilities and serious medical needs to stay in their homes and not go into a nursing facility. That's the purpose, is to help people stay in their homes. And so most of the services through these waivers tend to be medical in nature. And in fact, in order to qualify for the Aged and Disabled Waiver, a person must meet nursing facility level of care, meaning that they would be eligible to be placed in a nursing home, but they want to stay at home instead. So a lot of these services tend to be things like nursing services or homemaker services. This is actually one of the biggest ways Meals on Wheels is paid for. So a lot of things along those lines. When they are looking at eligibility for this category, especially for children, they're looking to make sure that the person has what's called a skilled nursing need. And what they mean by that are things like an unstable G-tube, a tracheotomy, an individual who's on a ventilator, those sorts of things. And especially for children, those are the kinds of things that they're looking for. But they're also looking for things like whether or not the person needs assistance with activities of daily living. So for example, can the individual feed themselves? Can they dress themselves? Can they bathe on their own? Can they go to the bathroom on their own? Those are the types of things that they're looking for there. Now, there's also a traumatic brain injury waiver. And again, you're going to need to meet nursing facility level of care. It is possible that you can meet ICFDD level of care, which I'll get more into when we're talking about the next waivers. But again, for the traumatic brain injury waiver, it's really looking more at the medical side of things rather than just anything cognitive or mental health related. And you must have a diagnosed traumatic brain injury, and Indiana has a very specific definition for that. In order for it to be considered a traumatic brain injury, there has to have been some outside force that caused the brain injury. So for example, if somebody got into a car accident, or if a tree limb fell on somebody and caused a brain injury, that's traumatic brain injury. An individual who had a stroke or meningitis or something internal that wound up causing a brain injury doesn't meet Indiana's definition of traumatic brain injury. If you think that this might be something that would serve your loved one, by all means call your local area agency on aging. For most of you, that's going to be LifeSource. You know what, I looked it up right before I got on and now I have forgotten which one it is. And I think 12 of them have the word life in there. But your local area agency on aging. And also, even if this doesn't apply to your loved one with Down syndrome, keep this in mind for other relatives or other friends that you may have where this could be something helpful for them. So then we also have waivers through the Bureau of Developmental Disabilities, or the BDDS office. And these waivers have a radically different focus. Those Division of Aging waivers were designed to help people stay in their homes and not go into a nursing home. These waivers are designed to help people get out and be as active in the community as possible. So in order to qualify for this, you must be a person who has an intellectual or a developmental disability, and you also have to be eligible. So BDDS staff will determine initial eligibility based on doing a level of care screening, and also looking at documents like psychological evaluations, educational records, IEPs, and medical records. As I said, you must have a diagnosed intellectual or developmental disability or related condition that occurred before age 22. And that's one of those non-negotiables. It has to have occurred before age 22. And when they say or related condition, that's because they only list a few things very specifically. That or related condition is supposed to be your catch-all. So, you know, we actually wind up talking to a lot of individuals who have chromosomal abnormalities or who have mitochondrial disorders. That's where we've got that catch-all there. Plus, let's be honest, they update the Diagnostic Statistical Manual every few years and the names all change, or at least a lot of them change. So this way, you know, it gives a little flexibility. But the one piece of flexibility that cannot happen is it must have occurred before age 22. Also, if you have an individual who maybe did sustain a traumatic brain injury, if it happened before age 22, that also means that it interrupted typical development. And if it occurred before age 22, there's the possibility that they may be able to get services through the Bureau of Developmental Disabilities. The condition must be expected to continue indefinitely, and they must meet a Medicaid eligibility, or they must meet Medicaid eligibility in a waiver compatible category. Wow, that was a little confusing now, wasn't it? So, believe it or not, there are about 20 different types of Medicaid. When I started this job, I thought Medicaid was just Medicaid. I was wrong. There are about 20 different kinds of Medicaid here in Indiana. And so in order to be on a waiver, you have to be eligible for one of those Medicaid categories that is compatible with the waiver. Not all of them are, and especially the one that we run into most often is individuals who are on HIP, which is the Healthy Indiana Plan, or HIP 2.0. That is not a waiver compatible category of Medicaid. Also, I know that at least here in the Indianapolis and in the Fort Wayne area, we tend to have a lot of refugees. I'm guessing you guys are pretty similar down in the Louisville area. Refugee-based Medicaid is not compatible with the waiver either. So I just kind of wanted to point that out. The big issue, though, is that individuals over the age of 18, in order to be on an appropriate type of Medicaid, individuals over 18 must be determined disabled by the Social Security Administration, which typically means they're either going to be on SSI or SSDI. And the other really important thing to know, again, for Indiana Medicaid, when you have a waiver, family income and family assets are disregarded. So the thing is, I see Heather's got a question. Go ahead, Heather. Oh, you're still on mute, hon. There we go.
Hi, can you hear me now?
I can.
So I have a question about my son. He just turned 19 months old.
Okay.
And I have been applying for him through the BEADS office or whatever to get on Medicaid health coverage for himself since he was in the NICU when he was born.
Okay.
How long should I expect this process to continue? Because I feel very frustrated and I don't understand what the holdup is.
So I'm gonna get more into that here in a few minutes, but I will say, unfortunately, this is where the pandemic has actually had a big impact. So I'm not using that as an excuse, just a recognition of the reality of this. Indiana does have a waiting list for Medicaid waiver services, at least for the Bureau of Developmental or for the Family Supports waiver. And prior to the pandemic, the waiting list was about a year long.
So we were told that he was on like the top of the waiting list or was off of the waiting list in like November.
Close. Yeah, you're close. I know that doesn't help at all, and I completely understand that. Prior to the pandemic, Indiana was targeting, and that's the word they mean for taking people off the waiting list. They were targeting 350 individuals each month. When the pandemic hit, they dropped it down to 150 individuals each month. And that's in large part just because a lot of the providers right now are focused exclusively on maintaining the clients that they have, because they've had some really significant workforce issues as a result of the pandemic, because a lot of the direct support professionals are individuals who may have been in high risk categories themselves of getting COVID. And then a lot of them were also the parents of very young children and no longer had, school to help watch their children, and more importantly, no longer had daycare available to them to watch their children. So it has slowed down. People getting the waiver quite a bit. I don't know that I can comfortably say how long this will take now, because I know what they're doing right now, but I also know that as soon as the pandemic is over, and I do see that on the horizon, once that pandemic is over, they're going to go back to targeting more individuals. So, I know right now they're starting to tell people that the waiting list is about 2 years long. I don't know that it will stay like that, because I do think that once the pandemic's over, they're going to start targeting more people, and it should go faster than the 2 years. But that doesn't help you because you're caught in the middle of that right now. So,
well, just as a follow-up to that comment, my son is now a cancer survivor. So obviously we've been through a lot of medical related issues, and my husband carries private insurance, which obviously my son is covered. Right. Is it correct that Medicaid will not back pay or assist any of those medical bills, even though we were supposedly off the list or we were qualified, or we were at the top of the list for the waiver or something as of November? It doesn't matter. So they're not going to do anything until we're through the process?
So I'm going to give an answer that sounds like it's hedging, but that's because it's a little more nuanced than that. So when anybody applies for Medicaid health insurance, Medicaid will automatically look back for 3 months to see if you should have qualified for Medicaid 3 months ago. And if you should have, they'll pay things 3 months previously. The problem is going to be that for your son, 3 months ago, he didn't qualify for Medicaid because 3 months ago, since he didn't have the waiver yet, they would look at family finances and he wouldn't qualify based on family finances. So for him, his Medicaid will start the month he becomes eligible for the waiver. Okay. So, if you don't mind, one of the things I would like you to do is either send me an email or give me a call. My email is Carly. It's Karly at arcind.org.
Okay.
And our phone number 317-977-2375. And let's talk to see if there might be some other things that could possibly help as well. Okay. I have a couple of ideas, but I don't want to
appreciate it. It had felt like that we were in some kind of weird limbo, and I didn't know if there was something else we needed to do, or if this was just what I should expect.
You know what? And it really is the fact that 2020 just messed the whole world up. On the one hand, time no longer existed, and on the other hand, it took forever too. So unfortunately, you got caught in the pandemic, and that is really what made the biggest impact on all of that. So I'm so sorry to hear that, though, because
it's a lot.
It is. So when they are looking to see if somebody is eligible for a waiver, the thing is, a diagnosis alone isn't enough. You also have to meet a certain level of care. And when they are determining if you meet the level of care, they are looking for substantial functional limitations in 3 out of 6 areas. And the 6 areas they're looking at are mobility, understanding and use of language, self-care, learning, self-direction, and capacity for independent living. Now, with the Bureau of Developmental Disabilities, like I said, we've got the two different waivers. And the first one is the Family Supports Waiver. And that's what everybody is getting nowadays. Now, the Family Supports Waiver has an annual budget for services. And in 2021, the maximum budget is $17,300 a year in waiver services. That does not include any of the Medicaid part of this. And as we were just talking about, there is a waiting list for these services. So like I said, the pandemic has certainly had a big impact on that. The good news is, once the pandemic is over and the world starts opening up again, I do believe that they're going to start targeting more individuals and get that waiting list going. And I will say, even at 2 years, that is much better than it used to be, because not that long ago, The waiting list to get on a waiver in Indiana was 15 years long. My son waited for 10 years, and I'm grateful that you guys don't have to do that. Now, I will also say that Indiana has 2 priority slots for the family supports waiver, and that's that individuals between 18 and 24 who have finished school can ask for priority status, because frankly, the state recognizes how hard it is to go from being in school and having all sorts of supports to suddenly having nothing. And they don't want people to go through that. So if you have a child or a loved one who's between 18 and 24 and they have finished school, they could ask for priority status and jump to the front of the line. Also, and Heather, I want you to know this, because this was not true when your son signed up for the waiver. But Indiana started a new priority status, which is that the children, and it must be children, it can't be siblings or cousins or anything like that, even if you're the legal guardian. The children, but it does include adult children, of active duty service members and veterans can also get priority status. And the big reason that Indiana did that was because, especially with active duty service members, they're moving around normally every 3 years or so. So their children are never in one place long enough to actually get the supports and services that they need. So Indiana created a priority category for those individuals so that those children and even adult children can start getting the services that they need. So Heather, if you or your husband are a veteran by any chance, you might be able to request priority status and jump to the front of the line. So then we have the Community Integration and Habilitation, or CIH waiver. And I think this is the one that's closest to Kentucky's Michelle P. waiver. This is now an emergency-based waiver here in Indiana. Individuals must be eligible for a BEATS waiver, and they have to meet one of the priority emergency categories. But the biggest difference between the CIH waiver and the family supports waiver is that with the CIH waiver, your budget for services is actually based on the individual's need, including their age, their health conditions, and their life situations. So are they living with family, or are they living on their own with housemates? So that impacts that budget as well. So the priority categories for a CIH waiver are going to be loss or incapacity of the primary caregiver when there are no other caregivers around. Caregivers over the age of 80. I know I can't defend the 80 part. That was literally what they could agree to when they created this waiver. But when they say caregivers over the age of 80, that doesn't just mean one of the caregivers over 80. That means all of the caregivers over 80. Extraordinary health and safety risk. Aging out of a childhood placement by either the Department of Education or the Department of Child Services. So for example, sometimes we have students who, and normally it's through behavioral needs, are placed in an educational residential facility like Daymar or TC Harris or something along those lines. If a child is aging out of that placement, that would be a criteria for getting the CIH waiver. Also, children who are in a childhood placement by the Department of Child Services. And the 2 big things there are individuals who may be in a residential setting, basically due to behaviors. If they're aging out, that would be a way that they could get a CIH waiver. Or if a child was actually a foster child and is aging out of the Department of Child Services, that would be an eligible way to get a CIH waiver. Then also leaving an institutional setting, so like a nursing facility, a state-operated facility, a group home, because a group home means something very different to the state of Indiana. A group home is considered an intermediate care facility for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities, or substantiated cases of abuse, neglect, or exploitation. So with the waiver, I'm going to do that a little bit. With the waiver, services are designed to be very person-centered and individualized, and to help self-advocates be an active and integrated part of the community, to help them learn independent living skills, to help supplement their needs, and to work toward the self-advocate's vision of a good life. And that's kind of a key phrase, is that vision of a good life, because that is what the state wants people to focus on. What is your vision of a good life, and how do we help you get there? And so one of the ways that they are working on that is they've redesigned the individualized support plan and created a person-centered individualized support plan. And that is a guide that describes, the PCISP guide describes the person-centered individualized support plan as a robust and thoughtful planning process that articulates the hopes, desires, and needs of the individuals, describes their life circumstances, and charts a path for the individualized support team to follow in supporting the individuals achieve their vision of a good life. And so one of the ways that they are working toward that is by using something called the LifeCourse Framework. This was something that was created by the University of Missouri, Kansas City, and the Missouri Family to Family Network. And the core belief behind LifeCourse is that all people have the right to live, love, work, play, and pursue their life aspirations in their community. And if that sounds amazingly like the Bureau of Developmental Disabilities Services vision statement, we'll call it an homage instead of stealing it. So, and the guiding principles behind this are to help people define what they want in life, but just as importantly, what they don't want in life, because sometimes that's not only the easier thing to figure out, but that is extremely important too. To help determine an individual's strengths, to determine what resources they already have available, especially when it comes to technology, community supports, relationships, as well as eligibility-specific options, to identify an individual's vision of a good life, and to determine the skills and resources they still need to achieve that good life. And so LifeCourse has all sorts of tools to help you through this process. And the best part is they've also got all sorts of videos to help you figure out how to use these tools. And the best part, they are all free. You can go to LifeCourseTools.com and start poking around there. And the great thing is they've also not only developed tools and focuses based on different life stages. So infancy and early childhood, school-age children, transition to adulthood, and now even aging resources, but they also break it down into different life domains. So here we're talking daily life and employment, community living, social and spirituality, healthy living, safety and security, and citizenship and advocacy. And so this is one of the tools that I like. This is called Exploring Life Possibilities. And down here, you have what we have traditionally done when it comes to people with developmental disabilities and different areas of life. So when it came to daily life and employment, in the past, we've always focused on things like sheltered workshops and day habilitation services. But now we're starting to recognize the possibilities. So now we're talking about volunteering. We're talking about working and supported employment. We're talking about careers, but we're also talking about things like trade schools and college and all sorts of different opportunities. You know, in the past, when it came to community living, we were talking about institutions and we were talking about intermediate care facilities and group homes. Now we're talking about adapted living spaces. We're talking about shared living. We're talking about public transportation and making sure that people with disabilities learn how to use public transportation and so much more. So one of the things that they also have are these things called integrated support stars, which are designed to help you figure out what resources you may already have available to you and what things you may still need to seek out. But you have the star and it's got all these different compartments to it and you don't even know what to put in there. And so this is a tool called Integrated Support Options, just to give you some ideas on what types of things to put into those support stars. So when it comes to daily life and employment, you know, when it comes to personal strengths, maybe it's things like they've already had some work or job or volunteer experience. Maybe they've had a summer job before. Maybe it's that they know exactly what they want to do. I would love to be one of those people, but you know, maybe it's that they know what they want to do. Maybe it's that they've already had responsibilities at home or at school. And so they've actually learned a lot of skills that way. it could be that their job is to do dishes every night, and they really know how to do dishes really well. So maybe we find a job in the community where they're doing dishes, or whatever the case may be. But this is just an idea of some of the things that you can put in those stars. But this is another one that I like. This is called the Developing a Vision tool. And what I like about this is there are two different versions of it. There's a version for families, and there's a version for individuals to fill out as well. And so I actually recommend that you each fill those out and then compare them, because you might be surprised to see that your vision of a good life for your child and your child's vision of a good life may be two radically different things. But what I like about LifeCourse is it asks questions to help you think of things, and it asks questions that may not even be on your radar to think about yet. So it's really great to help you prepare that way too. This is another one of my favorite tools. This is called a life trajectory worksheet. And so here in this big blue square is where you're going to list, what does your vision of a good life look like? And then down here in the red, what do you not want in life? Now, the first time I ever sat down, also, what are the past experiences you had that are getting to your good life? What do you still need to get to your good life? Just as importantly, what have you tried in the past that does not work? And what are the things you need to be careful of so that we don't go to what you want or what you don't want? The first time I ever sat down with my son to do this, he was a junior in high school, and I was trying to figure out what in the world is he going to do once high school is over. I was trying to focus on jobs, and in all honesty, getting my son to respond to anything is a challenge. And so I sat down with him so that we could do this worksheet together. And I said, Andy, what's your vision of a good life? And he goes, I don't know. I said, well, what are the types of things you want to do? I don't know. I mean, if the kid could have jumped up and ran away, he would have. But I think he knew he would have gotten in trouble if he did. So he didn't do that. But I knew that I wasn't going to get anywhere if I just kept saying, Andy, what's your vision of a good life? So I took a little bit of a different tact. And I said, you know what my vision of a good life is? I want to go to the movies. And he snapped his head up because he was not expecting me to say that. And I looked at him, do you want to go to the movies? And he goes, yeah. So what we did was, here in this vision of a good life, we wrote, go to the movies. And then I said, and you know what? I want to go to restaurants. My son does not care about restaurants, so we did not write that down. And so that's when I said to him, I said, Andy, what about you? What do you want to be able to do? And he thought for a minute, and he goes, I want to go to GameStop. I said, all right. And so we wrote GameStop down. And we started with those little things, because even though they seem trivial, and even though they seem unimportant, let's be honest, it's the little things in life that make life fun. And so part of your vision of a good life may be going to Starbucks. One of my colleagues, she has said that working from home is no longer part of her vision of a good life. So that's the other thing, is these things change. But as we were writing down, those little things like going to the movies and going to Starbucks and playing video games, I was able to turn it a little bit more. So I said, Andy, so you want to be able to go to the movies, and you want to go to GameStop, and you want to play video games. I said, how are you going to do all that? And he thought for a minute, and he goes, I need a job. Or he said, you need money. I said, okay, well, how are you going to get money? And he goes, I need a job. I said, all right. So what kind of jobs do you think you might want? And that's when we started that part of the discussion, which was what our purpose was. But we had to get there first. And so we talked about, what experiences he had. He was taking some construction classes in high school. We talked about the things that he liked to do. But yes, you can use this life trajectory worksheet for those big, all-encompassing things of, what do I want my life to look like? But you can also use it for smaller things. What does a good first year of high school look like? What does a good kindergarten year look like? Or a good starting preschool? We are all coming out of this haze where we've essentially been in quarantine for a year. What does a good reemergence from quarantine look like? We're probably not going to, well, at least where I'm at, we're still doing virtual school, or we're doing a hybrid program. Next year, though, we should be back to school in person. So what does a good school restart look like? What are the experiences we've had in the past that will make that look good? What are the things we still need? What are the things we need to be careful of when school reopens? What do we want that to look like when school reopens? What do we not want it to look like? So those are the types of things. And these types of worksheets can really help with all of that. This is another part of that trajectory worksheet, and another part of it that I really like, because it's basically a cheat sheet to your loved one. What do people like and admire about me? What's important to me? When is the last time somebody other than you and your family asked your loved one, what's important to them? And then also, how do you best support me? Because some people do really well if they can see something. Some people do really well when they're talking. Some people need to experience things. How do you best support the individual? So this is that integrated support star that I was talking to you about earlier. And so you have these sections. Here in the blue, it's what are the person's personal strengths and assets? Here in the light purple, what relationships do they have that can help them? In the green, what eligibility specific programs are there available to help? Like the waiver, like vocational rehabilitation services, like SSI, those sorts of things. Here in the darker purple, what community-based resources are available to them? Maybe that's summer programs at the parks and the library. Maybe that's that you have public transportation available to you. What types of things are out there for everybody in general? And then technology, and this is one that I think is easily overlooked, or at least, when I first started thinking about this, when I would think about technology, I would think about those gigantic communication devices that Medicaid would buy people. And I would think about, really, big, important, rigorous things. I didn't think about simple things like, a calculator. But yeah, a calculator is a piece of technology that makes our life a little easier. I didn't think of things like auto bill pay or auto prescription refill. I know that that's made a huge difference in our lives. My son used to only tell us he was out of medication when he was out of medication. That doesn't help when it's, 9 o'clock on a Sunday morning and you don't have any refills. So, things like auto prescription refill, now, he doesn't have to tell us. CVS gives us a call saying, hey, your prescription's ready for pickup. And that can be a game changer for some of our families. Even things like teaching them to use the calendar app on their smartphone. And I know it may seem a little strange to think about smartphones. When my son kept asking for a phone, and the thing is, he didn't talk to anybody. He certainly never used the telephone to talk to anybody. And so I thought, why would we do this? And it was later that I realized, wait, there are a lot of apps on there that can really help him out. And so we got him a phone, and then he still doesn't talk on the telephone, but he texts people, which is a way for him to communicate. But even things like using the video camera on your smartphone to record how you do something. That was actually how we taught my son how to do laundry, is we recorded a video of how you put the clothes in, where you set the knob on the washing machine to, how you put in the soap and the fabric softener, so that as he was learning, he could watch that video again to walk him through the steps. And that's how he learned to do the laundry. Now, this is an example of a support star for daily life. And so here we've got things like, electronic reminders and alarm clocks and cell phones, online resume builders, online classes, internet job searches. In fact, the Department of Workforce Development has a lot of great tools available for free to help with all this. But those are some of the technology things that are out there to help our loved ones. When it comes to personal strengths and assets, again, maybe it's that they had that summer job. Maybe it's that they know how to make choices and decisions. Maybe it's that they've got good social skills, or they've had practice at everyday living skills. What are the relationships they have that may help them get a job someday? Yes, it's going to be parents and family and teachers and friends. Maybe it's going to be the people you know from Special Olympics, or the people you know from Down Syndrome Louisville, who are going to be your connections and your network to help you find that job. You know, when it comes to, you know, those eligibility specific options, it's going to be things like job coaches and supported employment. Maybe it's some special college programs. Maybe it's that they've been through Head Start. So a lot of different things there. And then those community-based things. Maybe they volunteer at their local humane society, or maybe they rock babies in the NICU during non-pandemic times, you know, or they volunteer some way at the hospital. What are some of those, you know, just community-based things that may be out there to help? And since we're talking about different ones, they've even got a trajectory for respite services, because a lot of people look for respite, which is one of those services available under the waiver. Respite is a service designed to basically give parents a break. Because don't get me wrong, we love our children dearly, but sometimes we just need a break, even if it is just to go to the grocery store by ourselves. So sometimes respite can be something to have to help with that. But does your child actually need respite? You know, what does a good respite program look like? What does it do for the care recipient? What does it do for the caregiver? What are the past experiences they've had that have made respite good? What do they still need? Things like that. Here is one, again, specifically on respite. What's going on in my life? What would taking short breaks help both me and the person I provide care to? So how would that short break help you? And how would that short break help your loved one? What would I do if I had a break from caregiving? Who would I spend time with during my break from caregiving? And what needs to be in place so that I'm comfortable leaving the person that I'm caring for? Because sometimes, especially in those early days, that's kind of a big deal. Here they've done a support star on some respite options. But as I said, respite is one type of service available under the waiver. And believe it or not, there are about 30 different services available through the waiver. And here are some of the really big ones. The first one is case management. And this is the one service that is required for all waiver participants. And a case manager, first of all, they're doing all the paperwork for the waiver itself, okay? But at the same time, a good case manager is going to be your guide through this process. You know, they're going to help you find those resources that may be out there. They're going to make sure that your services are going the way that they're expected to go. And if not, why not? And that's part of what they do, is try to figure out, you know, why are things not working and how do we make them work better? That could be extended employment services. That could be participant and assistance and care, which is an extra set of hands in the house to help out with all sorts of different things. That can be day habilitation. It used to be called community habilitation. Within the last year, they have merged community habilitation and facility habilitation together. And even though it's called day habilitation, it can certainly take place in the evenings. But what they did by making that change was they created some more flexibility. So yes, you guys can go out into the community and, you know, you can do whatever, but you may also now be able to go back to the company's offices, and maybe, you know, you're having a movie night, or maybe you're going to work on some cooking skills or things like that you do in their offices as well. So it just gives a little more flexibility. Respite is another one of those services. Behavior supports or behavior management, and that doesn't mean bad behaviors. That means learning new ways to do things. So that can be a lot of different things. And one of the things that we see, especially in individuals with Down syndrome, is that they had a great school experience, but then when they're finished with school, one of the things we see is that it's not uncommon for an individual with Down syndrome to develop some depression once school is done, because, you know, they see all of their friends go off and do things that they're not doing. And all of their friends have gone off to college or all that. And so suddenly they're lonely because a lot of their friends are gone. So one of the things we see is some mild depression in adjusting to that new life circumstance. We also see that as their parents are getting older, especially, you know, when their parents pass away and maybe the siblings are the ones, you know, stepping in. That's a big adjustment. And so making sure that they have those supports there make a big difference in helping the individual out. Music therapy and recreation therapy are a couple of other really big ones. Adult day services, transportation. Now, I'll be honest, in theory, transportation means that you can use it to go anywhere. What I see in actual practice is that a lot of times that transportation is used to get them to and from other services or in the course of some of the other services that they're using. So how do you apply? Well, you can call up your local Bureau of Developmental Disability Services, or the Bureau of Developmental Disability Services just made the application available online. It's the first time they've done that. So now you can actually apply online if you'd like to. You can still apply by paper if you want to do that. You can call us up at the ARC and we can walk you through that process. This is the website for the new application. And in fact, I want to show you what that's going to look like. So let me take you to that. I queued it up so that I could get you to, or show you that website. Only now I've got to actually find where it's at on my computer. If you will bear with me for just 1 minute, please, as I find that. Well, okay. So one of my problems is that it had Zoom up first. So do you guys see a website from indiana.gov? I don't see any of you, so if somebody could just say yes or no.
Yes, thumbs up.
Okay. So in all honesty, if you just Google BDDS Indiana, it should get you here. And so if you go about halfway down the page, this is where the new online application is, and it's called the BEADS Gateway. And one of the reasons I'm taking you to this specific version is because here you'll also see frequently asked questions. They've got application instructions. They've got a video tutorial, and then they've got some other information there. And so what you would do is, because I just helped a family out with this yesterday, is you could just go through there and apply online. And as you can see, they've got all sorts of other information on their website as well. And they have it in a couple of different languages, okay? But if you go to beadsgateway.fssa.in.gov, this is the beginning of the application process, okay? So I just wanted to show you that so that you could kind of get started with that whole process. One of the big things that is going to sound a little bit strange is when you are filling out this application and it's asking about you, they don't mean you, they mean your loved one with a disability. And yes, even though your son is 19 months old, they are asking about his marital status. So when they're asking for things like marital status and how much education you completed, they mean your child, not you. So that's one of those little strange things to get used to. I know it's weird, but I just kind of wanted to give you that little hint to that as well. So If you're not sure if you have already signed up, there is actually a waitlist portal as well, and you can get through it through the same website. One of the things, or the one piece of information that you will need that you probably don't know off the top of your head, are the last 4 digits of your loved one's social security number. Just one parent to another, let me give you the piece of advice of learn that now, because anytime you deal with the Bureau of Developmental Disabilities, the 3 pieces of information they're going to want are name, date of birth, and last 4 digits of their social security number. So you can check on that. If you are checking on the waitlist portal, what you should see is all of your loved one's information. You should then also see your information as the parent, and then you'll also see an application date. If you do not see an application date on there, call the BEADS office right away, because something's a little hinky. So you should see an application date if you are on the waiting list, okay? By the way, you can also update your address and your phone number and all of your contact information through that same website. And you'll want to do that because they always do things by sending you a letter, or when it's time for you to come off the waiting list, they will send you a letter. So you want to make sure they've always got that information up to date. So what can you do for help right now? Well, first of all, think about your needs and your wants and your dreams for your loved one. You know, oftentimes when you have a child with a disability, everyone is so focused on the practical side of everything that we forget to dream, and we're not encouraged to dream the way other families are. So what are your dreams for your child? What do you want them to do in life? You know, do you want them to have a job? Do you want them to be independent? Do you want them to have friends? Of course we do. We also want them to, you know, on the one hand, we want them to have, you know, a romantic life because we want them to have a full life. And then we also think, no, that is my child. There's no such thing as a love life for my child. But then again, we gotta, you know, that's one of those hard things for any parent to come to terms with, is that one day their child will have a romantic life. So just something like that. And look at those LifeCourse tools, because those LifeCourse tools really can help you, you know, help you visualize and verbalize what it is that you want in life. Help your loved one figure out what it is that they want out of life, because they really do a good job of asking all sorts of questions that just make you think. And think about, you know, what do you have that are helping you get to that good life? And what do you still need to get to that good life? There may be some other programs that are out there as well that could help. So, you know, so for example, there's a program called Children's Special Healthcare Services, which may be available to help with medical costs. In some situations with that program, you have to be below 250% of the poverty level for the whole family. So there are some restrictions on that, but there could be all sorts of other things out there. And I know that Carly at Down Syndrome Louisville would be more than happy to help you think about what resources may be out there that she knows of. If you call us up here at the ARC, we will gladly talk with you about the resources we know of. And that's just it. Talk to your friends, talk to the other families you know, because that's just it. We families are the ones, you know, sticking together and helping each other out and helping us find what all is out there and available to us. Depending on your loved one's age, there could be programs through Vocational Rehabilitation Services, which is a state agency whose purpose is to help people with disabilities find jobs. In fact, a few years ago, they started a program called Pre-Employment Transition Services that will start as young as 14. And especially that program tends to focus a lot on career exploration and self-advocacy skills. So it's a really great program. It's often done in cooperation with schools, but it is not a school-based program, which means they don't have to follow the school calendar. It's possible for you to get supplemental security income to help with those finances. There could be additional medical supports available, and then community programs and natural supports as well. And so some of those include things, well, Down Syndrome Louisville is one of those community programs that is out there, and the friends you make are those natural supports. But it's also things like Self Advocates of Indiana and Special Olympics and Best Buddies, but it's also the YMCA and the Parks Department and the libraries and community centers and all sorts of different organizations that may be out there. So if the information you've received today is different from what you've heard from others, it could be that there have just been some changes and the others weren't quite familiar with those changes yet, because that is the one constant in all of this is it's constantly changing and constantly updating. So if you've ever got questions, go ahead and give us a call. That's exactly what we're here for. Everybody who works for the ARCA Advocacy Network is either a parent, a self-advocate, or a sibling. So we live this as well. You are welcome to sign up for our e-newsletter and our action alerts, especially during the legislative session. Those are important so that you know what's going on at the Indiana State House. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And again, if you've got questions, give us a call. We've got an 800 number as well as, you know, just a local phone number. You can always go to our website at arcind.org. And again, we've got that LifeCourse Tools website, which is lifecoursetools.com. So let me open it up. What questions do you guys have?
Yeah, Miss Heather has a question, I think.
Absolutely. So you're being all good and like raising your hand and I'm like totally not seeing it.
Okay, can you hear me?
I can.
So I just have a quick question. Obviously, since I'm still waiting on the family supports waiver, I'm not supposed to apply for like the community. What was the one that you said was like the Michelle P, the community supports?
The community integration and habilitation.
So I have to wait, correct, until I get approved for family supports till I can do that?
Well, no, you don't, but you would have to be in one of those 6 emergency situations. So, yeah.
So the only one that I'm doing,
I'm sorry?
The only one that I'm doing then is family support.
Right.
So there's nothing else I should be doing.
Correct.
Okay.
You're all good.
I just wanted to make sure.
Who is this?
This is William. Say hi.
Hi there.
He steals the show everywhere we go.
And he should. My kids are 20 and 14, so I think every baby is adorable, and I think even crying babies are adorable. So,
thank you so much.
So, what other questions do we have?
I muted myself. Hi, Mary. I see you. Do you have any questions for us? Or not for me, for Miss Carly. Hey, Scott. Anybody else? I see that Kim's on the call too. Kim, do you have any questions? I think I've got it so you can unmute yourself. There we go. If you have a question, Miss Kim. Well, Carly, this was so informative. I feel like I learned so much, and I really appreciate you. I'm definitely gonna hop in to those tools. Those are really amazing. The life tools are really cool.
They really are. Kim is asking about resources for home adaptation. And you know, that's a really, really important one. You know what? I would have to look, because I was about to say that only the CIH waiver had funding available for, they call it environmental modification. That's the official service through the waiver, is environmental modifications. But I was thinking that they had just added that, as a service potentially available under the family supports waiver. Let me look really quickly and see if I can find that answer real quick. One of the other things that you can do as well is, I know you guys don't have a Center for Independent Living, unfortunately, because that's one of the places that I would send you to. But sorry, I'm a little distracted as I'm looking for this. Environmental modifications. Environmental modifications are now available under the family supports waiver. Don't get me wrong, you know, one of the things with environmental modifications is that there's a lifetime cap on those. So if you are not someplace where you are going to stay permanently, you got to be real careful about whether or not you want to use that on a rental place. And most rental apartments, or at least federally funded apartments after 1991, have to be accessible. So that's just something else to keep in mind. But in theory, environmental modifications are available now under the Family Supports Waiver, and that is a recent change. But sometimes those are expensive, and sometimes, especially depending on what it is, you may not want to spend your waiver money on that. You may want to find some other resources for that. And so some of the things you might consider doing are having fundraisers and trying to raise money that way, but also reaching out to some of the service organizations, in your area. Maybe that's talking to the VFW, or, the Elks or the Eagles, or, those sorts of places, to see if they, the Shriners, to see if they would take that on as a service project for the organization. Especially if we're talking about something like a ramp to get into a home, a lot of the people, those service organizations, their members have other careers, and some of them may be in construction, some of them may be in engineering, and they can design and build, that ramp so that somebody can get into their home, or something along those lines. So just kind of thinking outside of the box that way. There can potentially be some grants that could help pay for some of those things too. I know of more grants available for children under 18 than I do for adults, but still there are some different community grants out there and available for that as well. Plus, there can also be some special financing options available, especially when we're talking about home modifications, because there may be some grant or some financing options through some places you wouldn't necessarily expect, like the Health and Human Services Administration, that were designed to help older adults age in their homes, but would still be eligible, or would still be appropriate for somebody with a developmental disability who may need some of those exact same services. So I think there were a couple of other questions. Emily, did you have a question? Oh, okay.
No, did you just want to say hi?
Yeah.
Oh, hey there.
I just got in this conversation. So
yeah. Emily lives in Kentucky, so she's on a different waiver, but you can still hang out with us. So that's totally cool that you're here.
I'm glad you joined us this morning.
Thank you. Well, my name is Emily Lane. I'm new I'm not on down. I was. Well, I can't say it right. I was in Down syndrome of Louisville, but not anymore now. Because I'm doing a podcast with Carly Wiggs.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, Emily got to co-host one of our episodes of our podcast that's going to be coming out sometime soon, right, Emily?
Fabulous.
Yes. That's very exciting. Well, I don't want to take any more of Miss Carly's time. If anyone, does anyone else have a last minute question? Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And
I do just want to add that if you guys are anything like me, you're going to think of something 3 weeks from now, give us a call. That is exactly why we're here.
Yes, absolutely. I'll be sure to, when we share this, like we'll share it in an email, I'll share it in the moms group and everywhere. I'll be sure to put all the information to contact the ARC, and then maybe even Carly's email address that she shared earlier as well, in case you have questions specifically for her. So I can't thank you enough. This was wonderful, and everyone have a great rest of your weekend.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye. 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 Bye, Emily. Bye, Scott. Bye, Mary.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye, Scott. You're still there. Bye.